Today, we're diving into a really tough case, the case of Christina Yuna Lee. It happened in New York City back on February 13th, 2022. We're going to try to understand what happened, the sentencing of the attacker, and the legal battle that followed. We're using some original reporting from People magazine and some court statements.
Yeah, it's a case that brings to light so many issues: public safety, mental health, and how we face these challenges as a society.
For sure. So let's start by getting to know Christina. We took a look at her LinkedIn profile, and it seems like she was a creative professional, someone who was really embracing, the energy and artistic spirit of New York.
And her family remembers her as creative, kind, and joyful. It's so crucial to remember behind the headlines, she's a real person with loved ones whose lives are forever changed.
Right. It makes what happened to her all the more disturbing. In the early morning hours, around 4:20 a.m., Christina was followed into her apartment building by a man named Assamad Nash. He forced his way into her apartment as she entered, and this terrifying attack ensued.
Yeah, the sources paint a really grim picture here. Nash stabbed Christina at least 40 times and attempted to sexually assault her. Her cries for help were heard by neighbors, though, who thankfully called 911. And this is where the timeline gets really important. The police response becomes a major point of contention.
So the neighbors called 911 at 4:22 a.m., and police arrived at the scene just minutes later. But they weren't able to get into her apartment until 5:40 a.m. So we're talking about over an hour later. What might have caused this delay?
Well, it appears the police had trouble getting through Christina's apartment door. And the reasons why are a central part of the family's lawsuit against the city. They're alleging negligence, arguing that a faster response could have saved Christina's life.
It's just gut-wrenching to think that quicker action might have made a difference. By the time police finally entered the apartment, Christina was found deceased, and Nash was discovered hiding under a mattress. So this, of course, led to his arrest, trial, and ultimately his conviction on murder and burglary charges in July of 2024.
Right, and Nash received a substantial sentence, 30 years to life in prison. During sentencing, the judge labeled him a danger to society and pointed to his serious mental health issues. This raises a significant question. Could this tragedy have been prevented if there were better mental health resources available and support systems in place?
Christina's father, Sungkan Lee, seems to think so. He delivered a really powerful impact statement during the sentencing, accusing the police of an inadequate response and expressing his anguish over their inability to save his daughter. His grief and frustration are palpable, and he's channeled that pain into action.
He's not only pursuing legal action against the city, but is also pushing for a new homeless shelter to be named in Christina's honor.
Oh, that's interesting. What's the reasoning behind that?
Well, Sungkan Lee's goal is twofold. He wants to memorialize his daughter and raise awareness about the potential dangers posed by people experiencing homelessness, particularly those struggling with mental health issues. It's just such a heartbreaking situation. And this proposal for the shelter has sparked a lot of debate. Some people see it as a fitting tribute, and others worry about stigmatizing people experiencing homelessness. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a complex issue. There are strong arguments on both sides, for sure. Those who support the shelter see it as a chance to raise awareness about the need for better resources and support for vulnerable populations. They argue that by naming the shelter after Christina, it could help humanize the issue and challenge those negative stereotypes.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So instead of just being temporary housing, it becomes a symbol of a much larger conversation.
Exactly. On the other hand, some worry that linking a homeless shelter to this crime could reinforce negative perceptions about people experiencing homelessness. There's a fear it might lead to more discrimination and prejudice.
Right, yeah, that's a valid concern, especially given the stigma that already surrounds homelessness and mental health. Are there more effective ways to honor Christina's memory while also advocating for positive change? What alternatives might be worth exploring? Well, there are definitely other avenues for addressing these issues. For example, some have suggested strengthening mental health services and providing greater support for people struggling with mental illness, like maybe expanding access to therapy, increasing funding for community mental health programs, and working to reduce the stigma around seeking help.
Yeah, it seems like we need a multifaceted approach here.
Yeah.
Not only addressing the immediate needs of those experiencing homelessness, but also tackling those root causes that contribute to these challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to move beyond just reacting to these tragedies and work towards a system that provides support and resources to prevent them from happening in the first place.
Sungkan Lee's lawsuit against the city definitely reflects that approach. He's seeking accountability, hoping to bring about systemic changes, that could prevent future tragedies. What are some of the key arguments in the lawsuit?
The lawsuit really focuses on the delayed police response, alleging that the city's negligence contributed to Christina's death. The family's legal team is arguing the police had a duty to act quickly to ensure her safety, and that their failure to do so had these fatal consequences.
Yeah, it's a powerful reminder that justice extends beyond just punishing the perpetrator. It's also about holding institutions accountable and advocating for reforms that protect the vulnerable. This case forces us to grapple with a difficult question: how to balance individual rights with the responsibility to ensure public safety.
It's a tough balance to strike, and there are no easy answers, but it's a conversation we have to have, and it's encouraging to see Christina's family using their platform to push for meaningful change. Their commitment to turning grief into action is really inspiring.
Their story shows the ripple effects of tragedy, how a single event can spark a wider conversation about these systemic issues, and the need for collective action.
What resonates with you the most from what you've learned about Christina's case?
I think it's the sheer tragedy of it all. A young life cut short, and a family left grappling with this unimaginable loss. But it's also the courage and determination of her father, Sung-Kan Lee. He has channeled his grief into a powerful force for advocacy and change.
It shows that even in the face of immense suffering, there is always hope for healing and progress. And it brings us back to that critical question we raised earlier.
So how can we, as individuals, contribute to creating a safer, more compassionate society? What actions can we take to address these underlying issues that we've been talking about?
Well, that's a powerful question. I think it starts with us,
Yeah.
examining our own biases and assumptions about homelessness and mental health. We need to educate ourselves about these issues, seeking out diverse perspectives and reliable information.
So moving beyond those stereotypes.
Yeah.
And really engaging with the human stories.
Exactly. It's about recognizing we all have a role to play in creating a more supportive and inclusive community. Even small actions can make a difference. Volunteering at a shelter, donating to a mental health organization, or just having open and honest conversations about these issues.
It's about fostering empathy, challenging stigma, and working towards a future where tragedies like Christina's are less likely.
Well said. I also think it's important to advocate for change at a higher level. We need to demand better from our elected officials, push for policies that prioritize mental health resources, affordable housing, and support services.
So taking action on an individual level,
Yeah,
in a societal level, recognizing that we're all in this together.
absolutely. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought. What would a truly effective and compassionate response to these challenges look like? It's something we need to keep thinking about and acting on.
This has been a difficult but necessary conversation. We've talked about some tough stuff,
Yeah.
but I hope everyone listening feels informed and empowered.
I agree. Christina's case is a reminder of what happens when we don't act. Let's honor her memory by working towards a future where everyone feels safe and supported.
Thank you for taking us through this case.
It was my pleasure. And to all our listeners, thank you for joining